Another week inside the Limitless Leadership Lounge. And if you're an entrepreneur, especially, you're going to want to stick around for this episode. Really exciting conversation up ahead with Robin Waite, who we have had on thanks to our friend Ben Albert. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But I do want to remind you that if you're enjoying the show so far and you really like the content we're putting out there, a review is really easy to leave and it makes a huge difference to us. So if you could leave that review up on wherever you're listening to, maybe it's Apple Podcasts, maybe it's Spotify, maybe just subscribing to our YouTube channel. We appreciate all of that so much. I am Jon Goehring, your host, as always, joined by Coach Jim Johnson and Dr. Rehnuma Karim. And today we're also joined by Robin Waite, who's a business coach. He's a speaker, and he's a best-selling author of this great book that I got the chance to read called Take Your Shot. Highly recommend it, and we'll dive into that a little bit more as the show goes on. He's a founder of Fearless Business. He helps coaches, consultants, and freelancers double their income while working with fewer, higher quality clients. It's all about quality over quantity for Robin, and the impact is real. You can see his very satisfied clients. He's all about working smarter, not harder. And today he's going to join us. He's going to help us rethink how we grow our business without burning out, which so many of us are very close to. Robin, thank you so much for your time today. Welcome to the Limitless Leadership Lounge.
Oh, th thank you for the introduction, John. God, that's something to live up to, isn't
Well,
it?
I know you're going to do it because I've really enjoyed your content. Obviously, we talked about your book. It's called Take Your Shot. It's a great fable about a young business owner who meets a mentor and his whole business is transformed through the lessons that he learns. But I know you also have so much other great content, including your YouTube channel and articles that you write. I've run across some of those on LinkedIn. One recent piece of content that I think could really resonate with our young and emerging leader audience is this content that you put out a video about some tips that you have, 10 tips for those young and emerging leaders, those 20s and 30s in that age range, what they can do to avoid some of the mistakes that you made and also just live a more content, fulfilled, and successful life. Could you just share one or two of those to start us off?
Yeah, of course. And it's a pleasure to be here, by the way. I'm very grateful for you inviting me onto the show. One of the big things which I've learned, so I'm 43 now, and as you do, you reflect on your life and your journey and from where you came from to the point where you're going to. And I realized that in my 20s, I think there are certainly some things which I would have changed. I certainly don't regret any of it, but there's definitely some things in amongst that I would do slightly differently. So taking, for example, like just the mere fact that I went through university and then I thought, right, that's uni done. I don't need to read any more books anymore. Like learning is done for me because I've been doing it for 20 odd years. And then started out on my business journey and realized that actually it's harder than everybody, puts out, says that it should be, or you think it should be. And maybe just out of stubbornness, didn't pick up books still for a little while. But then when I started to listen to audiobooks and go on a bit of a journey of self-development in my mid 20s, I kind of had that proper oh no moment where I was thinking, damn, I wish I hadn't have missed out on those few years when I didn't read. So my biggest tip is like to anybody who's in their 20s and 30s, don't ever stop learning. Like, doesn't matter whether it's for hobbies or for a business or for your work or to be a better parent or financial well-being, like whatever it is, just pick up books, listen to podcasts, go to events and listen to some of the amazingly entertaining and educational speakers that are out there. Because you can, there's always things that you can learn. It doesn't matter what sphere you're in. And actually, since I've gone on my own sort of journey of self-development and getting into coaching, I've kind of leaned into it even more. And it's like every time you get a major breakthrough, and I think with people, especially if you're a business owner, you go through these sort of cycles every 2 to 3 years as your business kind of consolidates and then grows again and consolidates and grows. I've been through that several times, and it coincides with sort of having a big breakthrough, meeting another mentor or reading another book or something like that, which then takes you up to the next level. And then along with that, as well as this one's a bit boring actually, but I wish that I would taken some financial advice in my 20s. I've been incredibly successful in a multitude of different areas, and my businesses in particular have done quite well. But as you do in your 20s, you don't really, I wasn't fortunate enough to come from parents who were particularly sort of financially savvy. So they worked incredibly hard, and so work ethic wise, they set a great example. But when it came to the financial side of things, it was very much easy come, easy go. They made the money and spent the money, and it was all invested in the right places, the house and schooling for me and my brother and various things like that. But we missed out on the fun parts of life. It felt like they worked really hard, but we never really had any holidays, or they worked really hard, but they didn't have much for retirement and had to fall back on, when my grandparents finally sort of passed away, they got some inheritance, and that ended up being their financial sort of plan, basically their fallback, which wasn't, I didn't think, particularly wise. So I definitely go back to my younger 20-year-old self and say, look, just put a little bit of it aside. Don't spend it all, and also you don't have to work quite as hard as you're working for this money. But hey, these are just things, aren't they, that you kind of pick up as you get older and hopefully a bit more wiser and end up with a few more grey hairs in your beard and and you're able to sort of pass these messages down. And actually, just to sort of wrap this up, it's kind of my eldest daughter's now 11. She's big into her swimming, so I'm poolside quite often most weekends now, and all over the sort of the southwest of the UK where her competitions are. And the last one we had an hour and a quarter drive, so I thought, right, great opportunity to impart some wisdom on my 11-year-old daughter around sort of wealth creation. Actually, we had a conversation about compounding interest and pensions and like how could she like arbitrage between like selling some time to somebody but then paying somebody less than the cost that so
Mm.
you can make a profit and things like that. And it was a really fascinating conversation.
Yeah, Robin, I think this is so valuable because sooner we understand the financial management, different topics around those area, we could make better decisions in life. I wish I had these kind of conversation, but I came also from the family where like the paycheck will be all used up. My parents worked hard, but we did not save enough. But one thing is discipline.
Mm.
Discipline. We need to learn on disciplines in life. My question to you is, although we have the disciplines and everything, but nowadays we also have dreams, ideas. I had an idea 7 years ago, and then I woke up at 2 a.m. in the morning and I had to buy the domain with that name to lock in the idea. So unless or until I have any momentum, I feel unrested. But I also have to think about the money. Do I have enough money to start a business? So when do we make that decision? So I jumped into starting my own nonprofit, taking money out of my retirement fund, and everybody told me how stupid I am because I took the money from my retirement fund. But now, after 8 years, I feel that it is giving me back. I'm happy, but I had to struggle. So the struggle period is there. So how would you advise a person who have the idea, but also does not have that means, but he or she has to sacrifice some optimization of financial certainty to start a business? What advice would you give that person?
Well, one thing which I always find amusing is that kind of when we start businesses, we assume that, we're going to have more abundance, more money, we're going to have more time and all these sorts of things. And actually, you end up giving up a 40-hour a week job to end up doing a 60-hour a week job when you first start your business. And that shocks a lot of people. But let's face it, if it was easy, then there wouldn't be an unfair advantage. As a small business owner, an entrepreneur, you do need a certain level of tenacity, endurance, patience, and everything, and tolerance as well, risk, to pain and things like that, in order to build a successful business. But the good news is, if you build it the right way, that sort of pain and discomfort that you go through when you're starting out in a business or any new venture for that matter, it's always going to be sort of a short-term pain in order to hopefully give you that long-term benefit if you build it the right way. So I look at it in terms of a lot of things. So everybody's different. Everybody has a different level of risk aversion. So some people are very risk averse. Some people have a very low tolerance to risk. And so starting out a business has to be done in a very safe way. They can't spend too much or risk too much. Some people are they'll take all of their life savings and put it into their business and, willing to kind of risk it all. So you've got to weigh that up. The you will at some point, like most people start a business and they see that it's going to be a nice straight line like that, but inevitably it's this squiggly line where there's lots of
Mm,
steps backwards and forwards and ups and downs along the way. And you have to like, so part of it is going accepting that we are going to hit a dip at some point. It is inevitable in business, well, life generally. So if you kind of prepare yourself mentally for those dips to happen, the game becomes, well, how can we make it more fun when they do happen? And there is a way to make that happen. But also, how can we get through those dips as quickly as humanly possible? Because if we
mm,
know they're going to come along, we can, it starts to become a bit more predictable. People think I'm absolutely mad. So when I talk about like going, like forcing your business to go into a dip, but actually it kind of makes sense because imagine you've been going on this nice plain sailing of consolidation and things have been going well. Your team are behaving well. Your clients are not, throwing up too many problems or challenges to you. You designed a business that was going to make a certain amount of money and it did. Imagine that it actually worked and played out. And then if you stay there for too long, you start to hit sort of the imposter zone where you start to imagine that things when when this has been too good for too long, when the thing's going to start going wrong. And it's a bit like what you focus on you get more of, so inevitably you end up going into the dip because you kind of making it happen, you're
right.
spotting all of the problems. What I tend to do though is because I the first time it happened to me, and I've been through this 5 times, so 3 times in my agency days, in the 12 years that I ran it, but also now twice as a coach in the last 9 years. I've hit this sort of dip and had to get through it. First time, really scary. It's like international sign of distress. What on earth's going wrong? I didn't want this to happen and everything else. Second time kind of went into the dip. I was like, hang on a minute, this feels familiar. And then
Mm,
third time it happened in my agency, I was like, here we go again. And then
yeah.
I'm prepared for it. You build up resilience to it. And I think that's
Mm,
that's kind of what making the makeup of a successful business owner is about, having a certain level of resilience, tolerance to pain, bit of tolerance to risk, and being able to get through the tough times a little bit faster. And actually, it's, in my coaching practice, the last time this happened, we were talking off air about the interview which I had with Ali Abdal, and all of
right.
those inquiries which came in. Now that would be a dream for most business owners to have sort of 3,000 leads come into your business pretty much
Mm,
overnight.
right.
But about 3 weeks into this journey, I'm like breaking at the seams because there's just all this inbound noise coming in. We've got all these books that we're sending out as well. And but the biggest challenge for me was I was getting lots of unqualified calls booked into my diary and scratching my head going, I'm smarter than this. I've been at this business game for 20 years. Why am I getting all these calls? Like I don't mind doing them because it's giving great value to these people, but they're never going to become clients. And so at some point, how I qualified people and my booking diary got smushed together. And I didn't design it that way originally, but somehow they ended up that way. So all I did, 3 weeks into this amazing campaign going on, where everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's so good for you, Robin. You're so successful, this stuff," and I'm there going, "Oh, I don't know, I'm just stressed and tired." I just switched everything off. So this was me realizing the dip was coming, both mentally and like within the business. And I was like, right, I'm just going to dive into this head first. Switched everything off. And then what happens when you go into a dip? You are forced to creatively solve that problem because your back's against the wall, and you've got to make a decision. Am I gonna fold and just that's it, or am I going to push through this? And if I'm going to push through it, like I'm going to solve this in a bigger, better, faster way than how I did it before. And so then turning it off made me realize that, oh, my application process wasn't in the right order with the call. So we separated it. We had an application process which better filtered people before they came onto a call with me, made sure that they were right for the program, or if they weren't, at least they would still be able to get some value without it taking up too much of my time. And then they could book the call and then away we go. And all of a sudden it's like, whew, it's like, the stress when everything's working properly. And
Mm,
actually it ended up doubling the size of my coaching practice just through that one innovation. And I think this is the thing, like if I hadn't have had that 20 odd years worth of business experience and the various dips, I probably wouldn't have the resilience to have dealt with that in the way that I did. I think a lot of smaller, newer businesses might have broken at that point and not wanted to go back to it again.
right.
Good point.
So true.
Hey, Robin, my friend Jen shared your book with me, and I read it, and I really enjoyed it. And it's a story of a golf pro that gets a mentor. And for young and emerging leaders, you hear that all the time. What's your advice on getting the right mentor for you as a leader? Because I think it's really important. But I think a lot of people are confused. How do I get a mentor? How do I pick the right mentor? Can you share some advice on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm first of all, I mean, it's also important to differentiate between like what is a coach, what is a mentor, because they hold two different roles.
Mm.
I'm probably 50-50 between the two actually. So coach in my view is somebody who kind of asks you those well-formed questions and draws, you have the answers in yourself and the coach draws those answers out of you and then helps you with the accountability and the momentum to kind of push you forward. A mentor in my eyes though has been in the game for longer than you have, so they've got all of the t-shirts and the medals from their time in service and all of those things, but they can see the shortcuts is the wrong word, but they can see what the path looks like and they're able to kind of guide you in a way from through a way in their experience. They've kind of been there and done it before. So for me, for example, I kind of flip-flop between the two. I've got a couple of sort of traditional coaching certifications, so I can dive into the mindset side of things, ask those questions, but also when somebody just wants to be told and shown what the path is, I can say, actually, just try this and see if that works. I liken it to imagine if you went to see your doctor and like the doctor just asks you lots of questions, but they don't end up telling you what's wrong with you, and away you
Mm.
go because you should know what the answers are. But then you go down the pub with your mates and you kind of tell them that you've got this problem and they just unsolicited, volunteer a load of advice all over you, when they're not experts in it, they just kind of tell you what their opinion is. And I believe actually, especially in the context of business and, in the corporate world, sometimes you kind of just need somebody to say, no, just do this. This will stand you in the best chances of it working. But I think whether it's a coach or a mentor, I think the mentor client relationship is also so, so, so important. You've got to really get on with one another and not to a point of being friends, but to a point whereby the trust between the mentor and mentee is such that the mentor can push you and challenge you and ask you questions in a way that you're not going to take offense to,
Mm.
basically,
Yeah.
but it's going to create the shift which you need to take. I think sometimes, people take on mentors and they're a bit overly sensitive and then the relationship starts to break down. So that sort of mentor-mentee relationship has got to be it's really based on a deep level of trust, I believe.
Mm. Now, one of my big takeaways from the book, again, take your shot. It's you got Russ, who's the golf pro, right, that Coach talked about, and he's looking for that mentor, and he's obviously the main character. He's the protagonist of this. The mentor comes in, his client. You got him, but then the other character in this book, who makes an appearance a lot and has a significant impact on the story, is his wife.
Mm,
And this is interesting to me because they're not in business together. This isn't about the business, but you get a peek into Russ's personal side of things too. Now, we've talked about with previous guests about, work-life balance, and a lot of times we prefer the term work-life integration because it really isn't a balance, right? There is this integration. How would you advise a young leader who's maybe starting a business or looking to level up their business to make sure that their family members, those closest to them, like, for example, their spouse, is on board? And how do we make sure that we continue to keep things in perspective, spending that amount of time with our family and kids that we need to, while still putting together our best selves and putting that towards our business?
great question. What's interesting for me is that I've come to realize that entrepreneurship is addictive, like if you're not careful, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard as an entrepreneur to get that to the check and the balance right between, work life. And one of the things which I've come to sort of realize is that it's not really about work life. If you're an entrepreneur and you absolutely love what you do and you could do it 24/7, it's actually about getting the most out of it. So it's just balance.
Mm.
If that makes any kind of sense. So
Mm.
for me personally, when there's lots of events which I speak at, there's lots of things which tend to sort of draw me away. I've got my some weeks I'm just here in my sleepy little, studio out in the Cotswolds, southwest of the UK, and I might not see somebody from one week to the next. But there's also times when it's a bit like an accordion. The accordion gets sort of the pressure turns on, and then all of a sudden there's lots of events coming up. Like this last month, for example, I've had a couple of events where I've had to stay away. I've had multiple trips down to London to go and record podcasts and things like that in person, and but one of the things is if I used to get very burnt out towards the so this was the first sign that I'd get towards sort of Friday afternoon. I'd go and pick my girls up from school and I'm just yawning all the drive home, and just I can already see that the weekend's going to be a bit of a drag just because I've overdone it during the week. So I made a decision 3 years ago now that I wouldn't work Fridays anymore, for example, because that means that I can have. I mean, the thing is, my Fridays now, I can choose to come into the office and do a bit of work and catch up if I want to, but primarily it's for things like writing. I might go and get my hair cut. I might just go down to the local hotel spa and have a massage or something like that. But the idea is that it's my day for me that is always there in the diary each and every week, but it doesn't compromise home life because I don't have to take time out to go to the spa and have a massage during the weekend. And I also doesn't compromise my work because my job is to get my work done between Monday and Thursday. Um, I used to really struggle with it because I felt I was being selfish. I felt that I felt very guilty about going off and doing stuff at the week on the Friday and stuff like that that wasn't work and wasn't home stuff. But I've come to realize that I call it guilt-free time off now. My Fridays is guilt-free time off, that it's a muscle that you have to exercise and you have to learn how to look after yourself first so that for me, I can be a better coach during the week. And I can also be a better parent at the weekends and obviously during in the evenings and things like that when the girls are around. But I see a lot of entrepreneurs who are just constantly they're on all of the time. They're like, um, the analogy I like to use is a bit like I don't know how familiar you are with surfing and how to
Mm.
catch a wave right when you're surfing. So the conditions have to be right. There has to be a swell coming through because that's where the energy is in the water. It has to be the right sort of the beach or point break so the swell hits that point at the right time, and the wind has to be coming offshore so that it meets the front of the wave and holds the wave up so you get a nice clean wave that you can then surf along. But you've
Mm.
also, as a surfer, got to be in the right spot out the back, in the lineup to make sure that you're catching the wave, not before it's broken or after it's kind of, passed over you, but at just the right spot. And you've got to be paddling at just the right speed in order to be able to kind of catch the wave. And then most likely you stand up and fall off like I do. That's generally what tends to happen, but it's fun.
Yeah.
But what I see a lot of business owners doing is that they are, there's no swell or the wind's blowing in the wrong direction or they've got the wrong board, so they don't have the right equipment. And they're frantically just paddling all of the time when there's,
Mm.
if there's no swells, there's no chance you're ever going to be able to catch a wave, right? So I think that the balance is right. Like take this month, for example, it's been tons of momentum. Imagine there's like perfect, like 10-foot swells coming through and the wind's offshore and it's perfect. And I don't have to paddle too much, like stuff's just happening and I catch all of those waves. But next month it might be completely the opposite. And there is no point in me paddling furiously. I
Mm.
might as well just lean into that quiet time. And I think and this comes back to something Rehnuma, which you were kind of alluding to, that work hard to get the results sort of mindset mentality that most entrepreneurs take because that's what their parents did. We feel if we just paddle frantically, it's going to create results. Inevitably, it doesn't. So I'm very pro like when momentum's there, paddle, catch the wave, great. When it's not there, that's a great opportunity, no matter how difficult it might be. Bank balance might be a bit low. You might not have as many clients coming through as you want or projects to work on. But that's a great opportunity to actually lean into family time or guilt-free time off and just kind of regather your energy so that when the circumstances and conditions are right, you can catch all of the waves that you want to.
Mm. Yeah, you
Mhm.
made a great point in your recent video when you said that success isn't necessarily all about working hard. While that's certainly important, but you made the point that like if it was all about working hard, then nurses and police officers and teachers would have like all the money in the world, right? So success isn't
Mm.
always about just working harder than everyone else.
That's it,
Right.
absolutely.
And different people have those different goals and mission in life. And entrepreneurs might be a little bit like a different type of breed. They have, like I have observed, like they're more like they are into risk. They can take challenges. And while going through your website, I found out like know your numbers,
Mm.
understand what the numbers mean. I am a bad person with numbers. So when it comes to number, I just hate it. When my accountant gives me numbers, I just don't want to look at it. But I know how crucial it is. So when we are in starting something new, how important, like you have the idea, how do you know that this idea will work? And could you give us some idea on what do you mean by the numbers? Know your numbers.
Well, Dr. Karim, we're going to have words after this recording's up because
Yeah.
for sure. No, jokes aside. So, again, I think people massively overcomplicate numbers, especially in business. I think it's a natural human tendency. Is it Parkinson's law where, and I may probably massively misquote this, so do correct me, but Parkinson's law states that if you give a 2 hour task 8 hours, you'll make it 4 times more complex to fill up the time, right? Humans are
Mm-hmm.
very good at making things more complicated.
Right.
So really in just the basic numbers of business, you can do like a business plan on a page and have that's enough to create a roadmap to build a profitable, sustainable business. So take something like pricing, for example. Most people will go and have a look at what their competitors are doing in order to set their prices, or maybe they think they've got to be the cheapest in the market to attract people in. But the last thing they typically think of is how much do I have to charge in order for my business to stand up economically and to be sustainable and profitable?
Right.
So I go the other way. I'm like, right, how much revenue would you like to make in your business? And I'll round the numbers just because it's easier. And they might say, oh, I'd like to make a six-figure business, $100,000 next year. So that's our first number. That's all. That's really simple. Can't get more
Mm.
simple than that. And also, it's like there'll be a lot of people who'll be like, "Oh, 100." They'll say a number and then they'll immediately talk themselves out of it. Oh, I couldn't possibly do $100,000 next year, and it'll make all sorts of noises. And I'm like, this is just a dare to dream like exercise. Let's just like
Mm.
design the business and see if we can make it like, write the numbers down, and see if we can design the business to get you there. So 100K. Next question I ask is, well, what are you thinking about, or how much on average do clients pay for your services at the moment or products? And they might say $1,000. So great. So we've already got two answers there without digging too deeply into it. That
Mm.
where it gets interesting though is where we start to mix the numbers up a little bit. So we take the big number, 100K, divide it by $1,000, and what do we get? 100 products, services, or widgets that we've got to sell in the next 12 months. And this is normally the point where most people's eyes pop out of their head or through their glasses because they're like, oh my God, I couldn't possibly work with 100 clients next year. I don't have the capacity to do that. And I've got family this and I've got responsibilities that and just don't have the time. So straight away, with only three questions, we've established that maybe the business model you've designed doesn't quite stack up. Maybe the price you've chosen isn't enough or something like that.
Mm.
So then we can look at the true capacity of your business. If you can't deliver 100 units of capacity, and again, human beings are very good at massively misquoting or like, misguessing like the numbers. So
Right.
quite often people will be like, they'll have as low as a third to a fifth of the capacity is what they give in that first question. So, now we've got 20 units of capacity, but we want to get to 100K. And
Mm.
then all of a sudden your eyes pop out of your head again because you realize now you've got to sell your product or service for 5K, 5 times the value of what it was before. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of just, raising your prices 5x and not stacking any extra value in. That's how you should not do it. The idea is that if you need to get 5K clients on board, what value do you need to deliver to them that's worth 5K to them that is then going to deliver them remarkable results or outcomes?
Right.
For their business or whatever it is. So we charge more money, which then gets us more time to deliver a better quality product or service to the end user, which gets them better outcomes and results, which means makes you more referable because they go and tell all of their friends and colleagues about you as well, which generates more money on the back end of it. So actually, like just knowing the basic numbers, charging a little bit more, for example, understanding what your capacity is, like that's only three or four numbers there, which kind of is then becomes the
Yes.
blueprint for your business from a delivery perspective. But we've also got to balance in Dr. Karim, that we've got two sides to the business. So we've got supply and demand. So we've been talking
Mm,
about the supply side of it. Now let's focus on the demand. So imagine next year you need 20 clients to hit your 100K target. And actually, your conversion rate is typically about, I don't know, maybe one in three. So you're a good salesperson, fairly strong
mm,
on that. Now it means you've got to get 60 consultations booked every year to get the 20 clients at 5K, that gets you the 100K. That's just
right.
over one a week.
Mm,
So, and then this is where most people go, oh, I can breathe. Well, one to two sales consultations a week. That's not too bad. I can manage that.
mm.
And then you can go, how many leads do you need to get in order to fill up those consultations? So you can, if we reverse engineer it from the end goal in mind, we end up with like a really simple business model that literally you can write it out on a single page of paper.
Yeah.
Right.
Begin with the end
Right.
in mind.
Great.
Yeah.
Well,
Great
I'm
advice.
curious, Robin, in building a business, social proof is, they've had a lot of studies on how powerful it is. I'm curious if you can help our audience with how have you found to get success with clients that are happy with you? Clem Blanchard calls it the raving fans. How do you get them to be raving fans? Write testimonials, maybe post about, how good it is working with Robin, because certainly that enhances your business when you have
Hmm.
those raving fans. What's your suggestions on that?
Well, the main one is to ask. I know that sounds really obvious, but it's remarkable how many business owners are so busy doing the client fulfillment, sell, deliver, sell, deliver, sell, deliver, sell, deliver, and then they forget about the piece at the end of it where you've got happy client who would be like shouting about you, but it's just you forgot to ask because you were so busy focused on the next client. So, um, making sure that you have a system or process at the end of the client fulfillment to get that feedback in. But also a little tip as well. Like sometimes your best clients, your biggest raving fans can be ones that have never spent a penny with you. Because so I have lots of people who've read the book, for example, or subscribed to the YouTube channel or been to one of my events. And there's a small subset of people who are just brilliant. They just need the idea, sort of fed to them and they can just run with it and get great results. So a lot of my best clients are ones who literally never paid me a penny. They're my biggest advocates because they've got value out of some of the free content. And they've just been able to run with it. But you need to have a couple of automations in place to make sure that happens. So little things like if you run an event, whether it's online or offline, doesn't matter. Set up an email automation to go out 24 hours later, which just asks them to go and leave a Google review, for example.
Mm,
There's lots of tools these days where you can gather video testimonials from people, but again, the best way I found to do that is to have a calendar slot available for clients to leave video testimonials. So it just pings off an email automatically after the engagement, which says, "Hey, I'd just love 15 minutes to for us to do an exit interview. So to hear about your experience of working with Fearless Business, for example." And again, most people are really happy to do that. They prefer the interview format because you can obviously ask questions and tweak
mm,
the sort of structure of their testimonial based on kind of what they're saying. And then it's a really simple formula that I always look at. So, like the snapshot case study is where were you before you picked up an engagement with us? What was it that made you choose us as your service provider, or, to become a client? What was it like to work with us when you came on board? And then finally, what was the end result that you got from it? Thinking about your business and the results you're getting. And again,
mm.
just those four questions is enough quite often to glean like this wonderful little snapshot case study. And if you can get it and capture it in a video, even better.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a really good point too, those video reviews and the client testimonials. Going back to the book, it's called Take Your Shot. Russ, the main character, meets David sort of serendipitously, right? And
Mm.
one of the things that David does is writes him a check for the amount of money that he thinks Russ should be charging, right? And that amount of money is, as the reader will notice, significantly higher than what he is charging. Are you communicating through this? And you got to read the book, okay, to understand totally what's going on here. But is this communicating to that oftentimes entrepreneurs are way undercharging their services? And how do we get over that mental block of believing in the value that we provide enough to assign the price tag that is worth it for potential clients?
Yeah, so I play all out there and just say that pretty much 99% of all business owners massively undercharge. So
Mhm.
you take any market or industry that's out there, and typically the top 10% of people in that industry manage to extract 60% of the value out of that market. And this is common across pretty much every small business service sector. So whether you're an accountant, a coach, a graphic designer, or you name it. And then what that means is that you've got 90% of the people who are left scrapping over 40% of what's left in the market, you know. So at the very least, if you want to give yourself the best opportunity, you want to be in the top, you don't have to be the most expensive necessarily, but you want to be in the top 10% pricing wise. But what a lot of people don't realize is that there's two sides to how people typically tend to go about figuring out what their prices are. The most obvious one is intellectually. So we sit down, you know, with a piece of paper and we do some sums, and or maybe we look at some of our competitors or peers and see how much they're charging. But all of this is about going about solving this problem intellectually. However, when you buy something, what are most buying decisions based on? Based on like what's in here, right?
Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
heart. So we either have a desire to buy a product, whether we need it or not. It's based on that, you know, desire, that emotional drive to buy the product. And when we're choosing between maybe different suppliers, part of our decision is based on how much do we trust a specific supplier? Do we trust that they're going to show up on time? Do we trust that they are good as what they say they are? Do we trust that they're going to do as good a job as they say they're going to do? So a lot of that is based on our gut instinct, our trust. So we have this difference between the head and the heart. So I go through an exercise with people where I'll ask them what the intellectual price, what price have they set their product or service at. So I don't know if you want to feel free to throw me an example of a product or service, and then I'll kind of walk you through the steps, which I would kind of role play it a little bit, so that
So,
I can
so
demonstrate
I
as
will
well.
give you an idea. Like I have an idea of an app that will encourage our local community, small and business entrepreneurs to sell their businesses. So it's like a app that will help the small businesses and also community individual to come up with ideas. So it's like a hub.
Okay.
So if I have this kind of tech-based idea, what to do with it, how to run them.
Okay. So what? Tell me about like what the outcomes or benefits of it are going to be first and foremost, just so I'm clear.
So first benefit would be like because it's in our country we don't have those kind of hub where local plumbers, local electricians, local caterer, they have a channel to market themselves. So it could be, and also when it's in a community, your trust gets higher. Like you know this person is in the community. I can get him and even in the weekends. So it's easier. So it will add some value, enhance the trust, and also the businesses of those all those local plumbers, service holders, and not only that, I want to like help the local small business owners sell their new stuff. Even the renters who want to rent their housing and they can put those messages. It's like a next door neighbor app through the community in our country, in Bangladesh.
Okay.
So this idea has not been explored, but now I'm like playing around with it.
Okay, so I'm already imagining there might be actually two sides to this. One is just a basic app where you get your business listing on it and you can network with other business owners.
Right.
But also there's a skill shortage that the business that, you know, whilst you might be able to get them leads, they might not be very good at converting it and turning it into higher paying clients. Okay.
Right.
So I'd like to focus on the higher end one, if that's okay. So imagine
Mm-hmm.
that you had a business mentoring coaching program that's the platinum version of this app,
Mm-hmm.
where they could come in and learn how to grow their business better and
Mm-hmm.
faster and in I don't know, a more productive sort of way.
Right.
So if we focus on that, what price would you think would be sort of appropriate to charge for that?
So initially, I'm always a low, and I'm always trying to charge low. So
Okay.
it's like the lowest, and I want to promote the service first
Yeah.
because the first year I cannot charge high if they don't know what return or what value they're going to get.
Okay, so
So,
that's a misconception because it
oh, okay.
sounds like it could be a great service, but now you've made an assumption and kind of projected onto your product of like what its
Mhm.
actual worth is. Okay, it's
Right.
what happens is if you go in too cheap, you end up anchoring people to cheap prices. Just
Mm,
another thing as well, and just as a reflection, quite often our ability to sell things is a direct reflection on how we choose to buy things. Okay, so what you
uh,
said was I prefer to sell low. Does that also mean you normally buy at a lower price as you can possibly get as well?
no, not always.
Not always.
Like,
That's quite interesting because quite
yeah,
often people are like, no, no, I
because
like to
I
buy cheap, so I sell cheap.
right, like I feel
Hmm.
like if the quality is
Interesting.
high, then I will go for higher price. But I
Oh,
will always go
okay.
with that because the quality matters to
Okay,
me.
so here's a thought and a question, and we'll get onto the pricing side of things. So you're not going to launch something here which is rubbish. You're going to launch something which is excellent, aren't you?
Right,
Yeah. So
exactly.
based on what you've just said, we should think about raising the price, raising the value of it.
Mm.
You see?
Yeah, my thought was like because people doesn't know how this service would work if they don't try it or anything like that, why will they be willing to pay that high price? So that was my thought. Like initially, do you like when we start or launch a business to enter the market, do we should we lower the price or it should be like that price where we can cover
So
all the
let
costs
me
and
ask you this: what degree of confidence do you have in your ability with this to deliver like great results for your clients?
I have high confidence because I did a data research and everybody said that they want this service
Great. So you've
in the
got high
community.
confidence in your ability to deliver great
Right.
results. Okay. So you need to back
Hmm.
that up with your value proposition when you sell it and
Mm,
sell it. I'm confident enough that you will get your money back within the first X number of months, or I'll refund you the investment.
Mm.
mm,
Imagine that.
mhm,
Okay, right.
mhm.
So let's get specific now. So how much were you thinking of sort of launch? If imagine we're launching that sort of the more expensive one where there's a bit of mentoring coaching that goes with it. Okay, how much would you charge for that, do you think?
Um, I would charge like $500 per hour or something like that.
Okay, why per hour?
Like it's like if it's like what 2 hours or a 3 hours session, like hand on hand, face to face, in person, person, and with all the handbooks and stuff like that, materials and everything. So
Okay.
it could be 500. I
Well,
was going much lower, like I was going 100. So after talking to you, I increased it.
oh, well, perfect. So that's
Yeah.
part of the heart has taken over there, and you're like, actually, yeah, I'm good at what I do, and actually, I'm going to get great results, and I can see myself. Okay.
Right.
So what we also want to do, remember, we started the conversation talking about sort of work-life balance. So we don't want you delivering loads of hours of like coaching to people one to one because
Right.
you know, good money, but eventually you'll get burnt out. I did, just a little clue. When I first started my coaching practice, doing mostly one to one. So you might want to consider doing a group version of this program.
Mm.
So maybe like as in cohorts of, I don't know, 20, 30 people once a
Right.
quarter or once every 4 months or something like that.
Hmm.
I wonder if, so £500 I think would probably be cheap for that, for like a
Mm.
3 month or 6 month, accelerator.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Got it.
So is there a world in your future, maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years, where you could see yourself maybe charging, I don't know, 3K for this program?
Yeah, definitely. Like this would be like the initial first year, I might go a little bit low, and then it would take I could raise it.
Did you notice that, John? She didn't even hesitate, like when I asked that question. Okay, but we're going to come back to like present day, which is great because you can I can feel your value already. This is wonderful.
Mhm.
So we're going to come back to present day. So what a lot of people see pricing as is like what I call binary. So it's either yes or no, I'm in or I'm out. It's too cheap or too expensive.
Mm,
What we've just established there that actually there's this bandwidth for Dr. Kareem that you're kind of working with. So between $500 and $3,000. And you can
mhm.
see the possibility as 2,500 numbers in between. Okay.
Right.
But here's the interesting thing. So we tried to figure a bit of it out intellectually. Confidence is starting to grow around your value. But let's
Mm,
say, imagine today you had to launch this thing. I don't know. You're saying 500, but what if it was $800 or $1,200 or
mm.
$1,500, $1,800?
18 for the first year?
Yeah. What about
Starting?
$2,200?
Yeah, I could like push myself to 1800.
Okay, good. So
Yeah,
all I was testing for then, it's a bit like Darren Brown, or when you see these people, the mentalists do their work. So I was trying
right.
to just look at your body language, your tonality, your pacing, any little ticks or quirks or anything like that as we were going through
Mm,
those numbers. And so
right.
1800 was just outside your comfort zone,
Yeah.
right?
Uh,
So
yes.
we've already raised you from intellectually up here $500 to now in here $1,800
Right.
because
Yeah.
that's what your heart has just told us you're worth or told
Mm,
you that you're worth. Okay.
hmm
So, for those who are maybe listening to the audio there who didn't quite catch that, there was just that momentary pause with Dr. Karim when we got to that sort of, $1,500, $1,800 sort of mark, where her body language sort of shifted and energy shifted, and we could see that, she was starting to question her value at that point.
mm.
So my advice would be launch this thing at, what do you like? Do you prefer to play just inside or just outside your comfort zone?
I could go outside my comfort zone.
So I would look at launching this thing
Yeah.
at $1,800.
Right.
Position it with some kind of a money back guarantee. It doesn't have to be like
Mhm.
100% money back guarantee. I'll get you this result or your money back. It can be a perceived, what we call a perceived value guarantee. So,
Mhm.
if we get to the end of this and you genuinely feel you haven't received value for money, we'll just discuss like, ratcheting back. I'll refund you some money or potentially all of it. So that
Right.
kind of de-risks it for the other person. And then I would just look to launch it. And this is, John, going back to your original question now, which prompted this. So there's a thing in the book where essentially why the coach decided to just write the check and pay for that money. I have an equivalent of this, which I do in real life. So the book Take Your Shot is actually based on a true story. So it's based on Russ, who was one of my first coaching clients. And what I do with clients is what I'm going to do with Dr. Kareem at this point. I'm gonna make a bet. I don't know if you're a betting lady or not.
I can.
Okay. So here's a thought because it sounds like it's a really great program. Okay. And I can near as damn it guarantee that if you pitch this offer to 10 people, at least probably two, three, or four are going to say yes. But let's say you're just starting out, you've got to build your confidence up around sales. Worst case, one person books it. Okay. If you
Mhm.
get to 10 pitches and you can document this for me somehow, and you don't sell a single person onto it, I will become your first client. In fact, what I'll do is I'll sponsor it for somebody you've got in your mind who could really benefit from
Oh,
this as a service. Okay. So
right.
I'll pay for it. I'll pay $1,800 to become that first client. We've got witnesses, and I genuinely mean this. My only caveat to this is that if you get 5-0, so you've done 5 pitches and no sales, that you give me a shout. If you've documented it and recorded some of your conversations, obviously my Bangladeshi is not particularly good, so if you can, they
Mhm.
might need to be in English or translated. But
Right.
um,
Hmm.
but at least if I can see how your approach to sales and how you position your offer and things like that, I'll give you a free sales training and with a view that we'll actually improve those last 5 pitches. And obviously, I want to
Oh,
swing the odds in your favor, so you get a client genuinely off your own terms. Worst case, it will be me, sponsoring one of your first clients. How
great.
does that sound?
This is so helpful, Robin, because one thing I did launch, like I tried to experiment with another platform to see my credibility. So there is this Lead Academy, which asked me to start a course, a nonprofit management course, using their platform. And within the first month, they had 200 person registered for
Wow.
my course, and I'm getting like 20% of what they're registering. So now my confidence level is high because everybody's giving me excellent review that we love Dr. Kareem's class, and but I'm not using it through my channels, my LinkedIn or anything like that, what Lead Academy participants are saying.
Yeah.
So I tested myself, and I'm doing a lot of talks in different industries with the lowest price. The others are charging high, but I'm charging very low. And they're calling me again and again and again. So I'm now thinking like, how can I increase my price? But so I have this hesitation. But today, after talking to you, I'm getting a little bit confidence to
There we go.
ask for
Perfect.
more.
Virtual high
Thanks.
five, Dr. Kareem. Bit of coaching in life. See.
That's great.
Well, Robin,
Thank you,
we
Robin. That was a great scenario. I just have one last
yeah.
question. I know we're about out of time, but I know going back to early in the interview, you talked about one of the things you would recommend to young people is to do more, studying, whether it be audiobooks or reading, hard copy. What would be two or three recommendations that you would recommend to people to help them with business ideas?
Yeah, well, one of my favorite books of all time is a book called Built to Sell by Jon Goehring. So it's this notion that you can, again, it was similar as a fable, basically, similar to Take Your Shot, actually, but and it has a very hallowed place on a special shelf over there with my Guinness World Record pictures of my families and a few awards because it was one of the first books I picked up when I went back to sort of reading again. But Built to Sell is just a fantastic book about sort of learning how to do one thing really well for one specific type of client, and then nailing the whole sort of system and process that drives it. And ideally build a business that would be fit to sell, even if you don't ultimately end up selling it. The other author, which I'm a huge fan of, is a guy called Daniel Priestley. So he's written four amazing books. And the first one I read of his was called Entrepreneur Revolution. He's updated it since because this was a while ago, but there's an updated version. But one of my favorite books of his is actually called Key Person of Influence. So I realize there's some people here who may still be in, leaders working within larger organizations, but there will also be people who are sort of trying to grow their own thing. But so key personal influence actually would work well for both of those audiences if people are looking to sort of level up within a large corporation. And really it's about just how do you make yourself stand out, build a personal brand through things like books, through improving your pitch, through partnerships and various other things like that to be able to level up. So yeah, they're two books which I would definitely recommend.
Thank you.
That's
Great.
awesome.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Robin. And I would certainly recommend Take Your Shot. You can learn more about that on Robin's website. And also, Robin, how would someone get in touch with you, potentially take advantage of some of your other free content and potentially work with you if they find value?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it would be really unfair of me to talk about how many books I gave away on another podcast and then not give away some signed copies here. So I've got a small stack of signed copies ready to go out at fearless.biz/TYS for Take Your Shot. So hopefully we'll share a link somewhere as well. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. Postage is entirely voluntary if you want to contribute a bit or not. Just put your address and I'll send it out. And then my YouTube channel as well. I'm trying to this is more for my own accountability, but the more subscribers I have, the more likely I am to show up regularly and post videos and good quality content on there. So jump onto the YouTube channel, drop me a subscribe on there, and then I'll keep on putting videos out, at the moment about 2 or 3 times a month.
Very good.
Nice.
All those links down in the show notes, both where you can grab that book. That's an incredibly generous offer from Robin because this is really going to level up your business development game. And on top of that, that YouTube channel, obviously totally free, so definitely worth checking out, totally risk-free. And you can check out that down in the show notes below. That's where we got a link to Robin's YouTube channel. Robin, we went a little bit everywhere today. We talked about pricing, we talked about business, work-life balance. You even did some live coaching here on the podcast. We can't thank you enough for your time today. We appreciate you coming on the Limitless Leadership Lounge.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.